I don't know how good this audio is going to be, but guys, I am drenched in sweat. I have walked so far, miles and miles, just to get to this forest, just for this video. But why am I here? Like, why have I come to this place? It's because I come here a lot. You know, I come here a lot to take many photos and record a lot of footage because I love it here. It's not your quintessential beautiful generic forest, like, if that makes any sense. It's a really messy place, but I think there's a level of beauty to that. But this video is all about taking inspiration as an artist from your location. No matter where you are, you can create something that is unique to you. And so I'm going to be talking about Alexey Titarenko. Photography is an awesome art form. I mean, capturing the world in still images, it presents us with loads of opportunities as it does challenges because you're limited to one frame. I mean, you snap the shutter and there you have it. Masterpiece! This is a joke. This is a terrible picture. Obviously, not everything you take will be perfect. Or will it? It's art, so nobody can really judge. Unless you're in a competition, in which case everyone judges. But the reason I really wanted to make this video was to demonstrate what is possible behind a single image and what can be told far beyond the surface level. See, you can have drawn animation which are continuous pictures in a row of frames with in-betweens to make the image look that much more slick. And it's very similar to a flip book in a sense, except maybe flip books have a much lower budget than, say, a Ghibli film. You could have continuous video, film, paintings, but to take a single image, a single frame, and have that set itself apart from all the others, that's hard. Even harder if you choose not to manipulate it. And when I say manipulation, I mean post-processing, so not throwing it into Photoshop or Lightroom and instead having it taken completely in the camera body. And this is what Alexey Titarenko does. He's not dead. He's still going. I've dug myself into a hole. If you're new here, feel free to subscribe to the channel. We're a small community, but it would mean the world, and I hope you enjoy the video. Man, I'm watching this edit back, and I didn't realise how nerdy I sounded in this video, so I do apologise, guys. It is what it is for this one. It's not always like that. So anyway, the reason I actually went into the forest was to get some photos that were genuinely inspired by this look, so long exposures, and I basically wanted to play around with it and take some pictures of the surrounding landscape, which basically happened to be trees, which is just a massive surprise. But anyway, the results were really interesting, so I'm going to post them at the end of this video, so stick to the end. Or you can go on my Instagram because they're there too. But yeah, it was just a really interesting experience. Alexey Titarenko is a photographer born in the Soviet Union, Leningrad. Basically when it was occupied by the USSR, obviously it's now known as St. Petersburg. Just from the age of 15, Alexey was establishing himself in the world of still imagery. He was actually the youngest member of his independent photo club, which was known as Zakalo. I think translates to mirror, which makes sense, because cameras. Yeah, this guy just had it in him from a really early age. From there, he graduated from the Department of Cinematic and Photographic Art at the Institute of Culture, and went on to be an absolute beast with a camera. That's the best way of summing that up. Alexey was drawn to photography because of its ability to preserve moments of time and to reveal nuances about the world that maybe we didn't realise before. And I think this is something that a lot of people can relate to in the arts industry. And now I just really want to share with you guys what makes his images stand out so much. What's so remarkable about Alexey as an artist is where his inspirations come from. His photos tell a story. There's nothing surface level about them. So Alexey's first photo series was actually called Nomenclatura of Signs, and this was developed through the late 80s to the early 90s and was essentially a representation of the Soviet bureaucracy during this time period. From here you really start to understand that Alexey has a really strong socio-political stance in his images. As you can see, the signs are lurking in the urban wilderness, ready to leap at passers-by. Do you guys like my David Attenborough impression? Jesus Christ. Nomenclature of Signs really drew from the aesthetics of Alexander Rodchenko, Kashmir Malevich, essentially a lot of avant-garde artists. And avant-garde, in a nutshell, essentially means experimentalism or convention breaking, just generally going against the norm. And this typically intrigues people a lot of the time it upsets them. And Alexey's first project was essentially an absurdist representation of life in the Soviet Union. This was his personal message to expose the communist regime, which in his personal perspective converted its citizens into signs, hence the name Nomenclatura of Signs. But we can clearly see in his first project that Alexey really stood up for his own personal beliefs and his beliefs for the people. It kind of reminds me of the illustrations you get in British newspapers back in the day where political figures would be represented as pigs and just kind of gross caricatures of themselves, and it's a similar non-conformist, against the grain kind of art. Anyway, let's take a step back and look at more of Alexey's work, because let's face it, that's more fun. So as the early 90s rolled in, Alexey decided to make something truly groundbreaking, and it stood as one of his most remarkable projects to this date: City of Shadows. This was the natural step after Nomenclature of Signs because, again, it provided a visceral representation of life in the Soviet Union. However, instead of signs, Alexey would introduce his signature long exposures. Just for those who don't know, a long exposure is essentially when you have a camera and you leave the shutter open over a set period of times, and it basically captures all of the data within that time period and merges it into a single photo. And this technique is what made the shadowy look. I mean, if we look at these images, it's just 10 to maybe hundreds of people walking past the frame, and they all blend into a mass of mist. And it's this mass, it's this togetherness that makes these photos so important, because not a single person is distinguishable from another. No one stands out, and in my opinion, this project is one of the greatest, most intriguing representations of a socio-political environment during a specific time period. Also, we can't talk about Alexey without at least mentioning Dmitry Shostakovich, a huge inspiration for his work due to his similar non-conformist outlooks. I like to think his music kind of goes hand in hand with what Alexey is trying to say here. This is also a great piece of advice for aspiring artists. I'm sure I've mentioned location, but when I say you can derive inspiration from anything, you really can, including music. Long exposures alone are quite simple techniques to actually pull off, but it's the composition these images are made which just make them so powerful. Titarenko's use of light goes hand in hand with his thematics. See, shaping light is vital to good composition. Composition being how an image is framed in order to tell a specific story the creator intends to tell. This togetherness, this identity, derives from a term popularized by Fyodor Dostoevsky called Russian soul. Dostoevsky is just incredible. He's provided so much literature based on the human condition and their relation with their environment, whether they're raised or brought up in. It's very similar to sociology and psychology. It's got ties in philosophical roots as well. It's really powerful in the debate scene. A lot of modern branches of study are still heavily embedded with Dostoevsky's original ideals, because what he did, what he says, it really does still hold up in today's environment, if not more so. This idea of the Russian soul was a massive element in bringing these photographs to life, because it's all good getting a long exposure of people, but giving it meaning before the fact is a statement on any good artist. The Russian soul spoke on an individual's identity, their cultural beliefs. It comes from a place in which they were born and raised, and it has very close ties to patriotism, but I'd really argue this can be applied to anyone of any culture. It's about deriving art from your own personal upbringing, your own beliefs. Over time, Alexey has worked on so many more projects, and it's clear to see that he derives his art from the world around him. Whichever country, whichever city he's in, there is always something new to be told. I mean, from Venice to Havana and to New York, which is where Alexey is now currently working. You can see in his work that the environment he shoots in tells a story, and the people involved represent that environment. As an artist, you can really appreciate when someone has put time and dedication into their own work. I think it's something we should all do when it comes to things we just love doing. I mean, the reason for art to exist in the first place can come from countless aspects of life, and each is unique to that individual. It could be completely based in the environment you've been raised in, or the environment you're currently in or traveling to. It could be based on philosophies, or you could get experimental and just base it on convention-breaking things, which is exactly what Alexey did in the first place. Every reason, every aspect you want to convey in your own work, it's going to take a crazy amount of time to actually master and make your style your own. For the most part, you're always going to be learning, which is a great thing. There's always going to be something to experience, there's always going to be more you can capture, and that's why this medium has just been alive for so long. That's why films don't die, that's why paintings don't die, because it immortalizes an individual's ideals into a piece of work, and that's incredible. And what's more amazing is you can still take so many millions of different iterations from the exact same thing. You can have paintings of the same thing and still be completely different from one another. The world around you, your upbringing, all of it contributes to your own unique perspective, which I'm hoping you'll incorporate into art if you choose to do so. All I can say to wrap up this video is just use your environment, whether it be towering buildings or an ordinary suburb or just a simple forest. Use it. Turn that into something you can achieve, something that's so unique to your own vision, to your own personal experiences, because what is most personal is what works best. Anyway, my throat hurts and I need to clean my Doc Martens because they got muddy for this video. So take care and subscribe. Ugh.